Good people, we are back, episode number 47. And today I have the pleasure and honor of interviewing Dr. Ian K. Smith. Hey, Ian, how you doing, man?
Good. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Appreciate you coming from Chicago. I always love to do the in-person interviews. You know, so much better. Energy's always better. So, Dr. Ian, you all know him. He doesn't need much of an introduction. Celebrity Fit Club, The View, is correspondent for NBC News, anchor contributor to HealthWatch, which is a nationally syndicated show on the American Urban radio networks. And the brother's a prolific writer. I counted 16 books, but I could be off. Is it 17 or is it 16? Or is it 18?
It's 16.
It's
17's in April.
17's in April. Yeah. All right. And is 17, what's the title of that book?
The new one's going to be called Clean and Lean.
Clean and Lean. Okay. Yeah. 2019. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, many of those books are New York Times bestsellers. Most are, you know, health related and wellness related. But his most recent book, The Ancient Nine, explores, of all things, ancient secret societies at Harvard, which is a semi-autobiographical or fully autobiographical story of a young black man who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, who made his way into one of these societies and the experience, which is essentially Dr. Ian's experience. So we're going to get into that as well.
We like to say the other side of the tracks.
The other side of the tracks.
Yeah. They used to say the wrong side, but that has connotations to the other side of the tracks.
The other side of the tracks, or the different side of the tracks.
That's right.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Brownsville, so I'm very, very aware of the other side of the track.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Ian, you know, my listeners who have listened to my show know the premise, but I'm just going to repeat it for anyone new. You know, our major issue, our major problem is that we ignore truth. And why do we ignore truth? Well, because it's uncomfortable, because, you know, it's not fun. And once we actually accept the truth, we can actually move on past certain barriers and become more successful. So I usually start with personal or professional. I give you a choice. Whichever one you want to dive into, go ahead. Go right ahead. But give us, what I like to do is give us a story. You're a natural storyteller. You're a natural communicator. So give us a story around a truth that you ignored, either personally or professionally, that once you accepted it, you were able to move past and become more successful.
When I was a medical student at the University of Chicago, I was a third-year medical student. And for those who don't understand the medical school system, as a third year, you're doing these rotations where you're going through different disciplines. Right. It could be pediatrics with kids, it could be surgery, the ER, whatever. So you're going through these different rotations where you are training for a certain period of time, 2 or 3 months in a particular discipline, and you go to the next rotation. And so I was doing my rotation in OB-GYN, obstetrics and gynecology. And I'd already decided I was going to be a surgeon, but even though, as you know, you decide what you want to do, you still have to go through everything. So you have a broad training. And I was doing this rotation, doing very well, I thought, in this rotation. And I got called into the office of one of the doctors, one of the professors on service, who was an African-American man. So I was thinking it was actually going to be a call into his office to be a mentor, and because there aren't many African-American physicians at that level, and particularly at the school I went to, there were very few African-American physicians.
Sure. It was Dartmouth, right?
I went to Dartmouth Med School for 2 years and the University of Chicago for 2 years.
Right.
So this was at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
And so he calls me to his office and he says to me, Smith, we need to have a talk. So, well, that wasn't a good start.
No.
And so basically he says that you're overdressed and you're carrying yourself above your station, basically is what he was trying to say to me. And so I'm looking at him and I'm trying to figure out, first of all, what is he really saying to me, number one? Number two, how do I keep myself in check? Because I tend to be very direct and very outspoken and not intimidated by anyone. And number three, how is my reaction going to impact the grade that I get on this rotation, which is important for my larger transcript?
Exactly.
So in a very short period of time, I'm trying to weigh all these things in. And I asked him to explain, like, what do you mean I'm overdressed? I mean, I dressed very well because I felt as though that as a student, you wanted to look the part. You
Yes.
wanted to be professional looking.
Yes.
As an African-American male, I particularly wanted to make sure that I was presentable and that any stereotypes people may have, hopefully me dressing well would disarm and disengage people of those stereotypes. So I really was working hard to look very good. What we would say, what I may wear to church sometimes. Okay,
Right.
I wasn't wearing a tuxedo, but I was wearing something I could go to
Shirt,
church
tie,
in.
right.
Yeah,
Wing
tie.
tips,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Nice shoes. Make sure they're polished. So after he and I had this back and forth, and his answer was very unsatisfactory, and all that I could figure out was that here was this uptight guy who had assimilated into the system, and either because of hateration towards me, or because he had been selected by his colleagues as the mouthpiece because he was African American, so it was best that he relay this message to me. Whatever it was, none of it really made any sense to me. And I've always been an independent thinker, and I made a quick analysis that this was pretty stupid. However, I also realized that given the power structure, that this guy and his colleagues had complete control over my grade in that rotation.
Absolutely.
And I needed to do well in that rotation. Even though it wasn't going to be my specialty and my discipline in the future, as you know,
Yeah, they look at that.
they look at everything. And if I had a fail or a low grade in that rotation, what happened? So I decided, thank you very much for sharing that with me.
In that moment, you were able to say
In that moment, thank you very much for sharing with me. I'm dressing this way because I think it's important for me to put my best look forward. And I'm doing the best I can, and I appreciate it. And the meeting was over. The truth that I realized about myself was that I am not someone who can operate well in a hierarchy, period. And I have a very difficult time being subordinate to people who either I don't respect, who I don't think are particularly smart, or who I think they're okay, but why should their position alone dictate or dominate my position just because they got there before I got there? And so I realized very early on that being in the hierarchy of medicine in a traditional sense was not my path.
Wow.
And that I would not be able to keep my mouth shut or always say the politically correct things to those who I felt as though were saying things that deserved a strong rebuke. Okay?
Especially in surgery.
Especially in
is
surgery.
Supremely hierarchical.
Supremely hierarchical.
Good Lord.
I had one surgeon sit me down and say, "Smith, you're never going to make it." I mean, who does that to a student?
Oh, it happens.
And had I not been who I was very tough as a kid. I was very confident. I was very accomplished in what I had done in my academic career. So his words were like water, off a duck's back. But had I been someone weaker, someone not grounded, someone who didn't have a strong family background, that could crush a kid.
Sure.
And so I realized that, while I love medicine, that being in the traditional structure was not going to be my path forward.
This is sort of, I'm getting ahead of myself, but because I did my research and I couldn't find where you did a residency.
I did.
You did do a residency.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I started off in orthopedic surgery.
Interesting.
Okay. And then when I was doing ortho, I started doing TV and doing the media.
Okay, got it.
And then I left orthopedic surgery and did rehab. Physical rehab.
Physiatry.
Yeah, physiatry. Because
Interesting. I matched in physiatry initially.
yeah, so the physiatrist allowed me to be able to do my TV and media career and still do residency. So I ended up completing my residency in physiatry, but I started off in orthopedic surgery.
Wow.
But I also started doing TV when I was a surgical intern, and the two were very strange bedfellows. So I made a career decision that was not very popular with a lot of people.
Who's a lot of people?
Well, my family, my friends, the people at the hospital thought I was crazy. I matched in orthopedic surgery. It was very difficult to match in orthopedic surgery, particularly in New York City.
Yeah.
So, matching, for those listening, means that you're accepted into a program of training. So just because you want to do a certain specialty as a medical school graduate doesn't mean you get to do it.
Right.
You got to go through a whole lottery system. And so I got this very, very highly coveted and desired match into orthopedic surgery in New York City at a great hospital. Right. But I just felt like something said to me that, back to truth, the person who I was, as much as I love the OR, and I still miss the OR to this day, the smells, the sounds, the organization, the sterility of the operating room, I miss it. But as much as I loved all of that, I realized in my experience as a medical student that I was probably not going to do very well in a system that wanted me to
subjugate yourself. Yeah.
Simply because it's the system. I just don't work that well.
Yeah.
In that kind of environment.
Yeah, that, it's funny. That's one of the reasons I went into emergency medicine, because it was probably the least hierarchical with the most amount of flexibility, and knowing that when I got out, I'm not tethered to a hospital per se. I mean, I have to work in a hospital, but I don't have to be there.
You can go anywhere.
I can go anywhere.
First of all, you can work anywhere as an ER doc.
Right.
But number two, when you leave the hospital, you're pretty much out of the hospital.
I'm done. Nobody's
your
calling
shift is
me.
over. When your shift's over, your shift's over.
Right.
Absolutely.
Exactly. But yet and still, with all of that, I still had and have similar feelings to what you're talking about. So it's really interesting. So was that personal or professional?
That was probably both. So we'll take it as a hybrid. How about that?
Okay. All right. You want to give an additional one? You want to give maybe a more personal one, or you want to give another professional one?
If I think of one.
Okay. So
I'll come back to it.
Let's keep moving. Talk a little bit about how your approach to fitness mirrors your approach to life. You had this quote on IG that said, I might not be as good as you, but I will outwork you. Talk about how you infuse that and what you do on a daily basis.
I love my IG, by the way.
Really?
Well,
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, I don't do anything on IG that's personal in the sense of, no family.
Like family, kids.
No, I don't do that.
Yeah.
And social media, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm very much, listen, people can do what they want to do with their families. I'm not telling you how to do your family or IGs, but I feel like someone who is a public person like myself, my kids and my wife have a right to be in control of how they are public facing.
Yeah.
And just because I'm a public person, they don't have to be. And so I made that commitment way early that I would keep them away from the spotlight. If they want to be public, they can. And they've all said to me, nope. We like it just like this. And I don't blame him. I'd be the same way. My career is very public, and I'm not ashamed of it, or I don't regret it. But I tend to be a very private person, which is kind of, it sounds like an oxymoron that a public person who wants to be private, but I do. And my family is very private to me. And with my family, I'm not Dr. Ian, I'm Dad, or I'm Ian, and that's how it should always be.
Yeah.
But anyway, so... I feel like my IG and what I say is, I am a very motivated person. I always have been. And I like to work. I like the feeling of work. And I like what work brings me. And it feels better when I work for it. That's just how I am. Now, sometimes people have made me work too hard. And I'm not afraid of hard work, but too hard means not that I can't do it because I did it, but it means that people put obstacles in my way to reach a certain result. But, my statement that I may not be as good as you, but I will outwork you that's how I've won the game, is that I will work and work and work. And, I try to impart to people who follow me, particularly those who are trying to do weight loss transformations, that you have to work.
Yeah. And,
anything you want in life, you got to work hard at it. And it tastes much better when you work hard at it. It feels much better. And it really does. Yes. And, when someone just gives you something, it doesn't mean you still can't enjoy what they give you. But when you work and get it, then while you're enjoying it, you're also remembering all that you went through to get there.
Sure.
My grandfather used to always say, I grew up on the other side of the mountain. And, and that's a deep statement. I mean, he's been to the mountaintop, but he was on the other side, and you never forget being on the other side of the mountain, and the work it takes to get up the mountain. So a lot of my Instagram posts are meant to be inspirational.
Yeah.
Some say motivational, but I don't think you can motivate others, but people have to find motivation within.
Right.
So I like to say inspirational per se, though to some it may be motivational, but I don't assign it that. But I try to be inspirational and let people know that while I'm writing these books and I'm giving you kind of various prescriptions to change your life and to be healthy and to enjoy life, I work too. Right. And I want them to see that I'm, it doesn't come to me naturally. I've got to be in the gym just like you. Yeah. So, what bothers me is when people say one thing and they do the other. You got a cardiologist who's telling you to lose weight, and have better behavior. He's outside the hospital, 40 pounds overweight, smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
I mean, that's horrific.
Yeah.
It's horrific.
Yeah. So
those people should be fired.
That's an oxymoron.
Yeah, and they should be fired. They should not be in charge of guiding and leading people because that's not genuine.
Yeah, and that's not leadership. You lead
not
by
leadership.
example.
You
right.
better believe it.
All right. So September 18th, you released The Ancient Nine, a book about secret societies at Harvard. And you talk about just talk a little bit about the 25-year journey of actually publishing this book, because I know you started this back then. And why do you think this book is important today?
Well, of all my books, the 16 books, this is the most autobiographical by far. And people who read this book will learn something about me that they did not know from my other books or my TV appearances. This is about a kid who comes from the other side of the tracks, who is mysteriously invited to join one of Harvard's ancient elite societies, secret societies, they're called final clubs. And he unknowingly and unwittingly joins this process, which is called the punch, where he is almost like other students. They are in a tryout to join the secret society. And, I've been writing this book for 25 years. One, because when I first started writing it in college, I didn't know when I was going to publish it. I knew I wanted to tell this story at some point in my life. I just didn't know when. Yeah. So I started writing it in college because I wanted the geography of campus, the feelings that I had as an African-American male in the secret society. I wanted all that to be fresh. And so I wanted to preserve that. So I started writing a lot of it then, so I had it on the page. And then as the years progressed, I added and tweaked and modified and continued to research the story. But I started back then so that the bones of the book were well cemented back when I was an undergrad, because I want you to go through this process like I went through this process, where you don't know what's going to happen, where you're nervous at times, where you feel guilt that as an African American, you're joining a secret society at Harvard, an elite society that for years has kept blacks out and women out. And so here I was getting ready to join one, and I felt very conflicted about it. I had friends on campus who could never join one of these secret societies because they weren't invited. And so I've been writing it for a long time because I wanted it to really encompass how I felt then, and also kind of all the research I learned about Harvard and these clubs. And also it took so long because these diet books and health books have been so successful, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to God for that. But publishers, I guess, are like record companies.
Absolutely.
They want you to keep doing what the hits are.
Or the film industry.
Or the film industry.
Part 1, part 2, part
sequels,
3, 4, 5, 6.
Right. Yeah. So these diet books have been doing fantastically well. I'm thankful to the fans and, like I said, to God for it. But my creative passion is also fiction. And I like telling stories. I like watching stories. I'm a big consumer of stories. And so I wanted to tell this story. And I finally just said to my publisher, listen, this is what we're doing next. I've reached the stage in my career
you have that kind of cachet.
I have some cachet. And so I said, this is next. And so now is the time. And the good news is that, it's been optioned to become a movie by...
Already?
Already. It's been optioned.
Wow.
So I'm a knock on wood.
This is actually real wood table. So
good. Yeah. So I'm knocking on it. But yeah, so I'm excited about it.
Wow.
I know it's weird for an author to say this. I love this book. I read it myself sometimes, different sections, and I'm as lost in the story as if I didn't write it, because, part of good storytelling is, in my opinion, part of good storytelling is making the reader feel like they are there.
Yes.
And to stimulate all senses of the reader. Your smell, your sight, your sound, the touch. All these senses need to be stimulated. And there are different stories in this book. It's not just the big story. Obviously, the big arc is this kid joining this very elite society.
Spencer Collins. Yeah.
Spencer Collins, that was, membered by people like John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, the Roosevelts. Matt Damon was in my club. Right. So that's the big arc. But the smaller arc is this kid from the other side of the track that's at this very elite college and dealing with that. He's on the basketball team. He has a love interest who works in the dining hall. He falls in love with this girl who wants nothing to do with him because he's at Harvard. And she thinks that he's one of those. She thinks he's one of those stuffy, stuck-up Harvard kids, and he's not.
Right.
He's actually from the same kind of mold that she is from, but she doesn't realize that, so he's fighting for her. It's just, So there's a lot of stuff in there that I think makes it a fun story.
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I read the first 3 pages, and I can tell people that are listening to us right now that, you know, when it opens up, it leaves you in a state of bewilderment. That's all I'll say. You're like, what the is going on? And it's a great intro. You know, I think all great books, they want to open and make you, you know, there's an actual, and I know there's an actual technique to this, because in writing my book, talking to certain authors, you know, there's a technique to turn paging, to being a turn pager, and I definitely started to get that sense as I was reading it. So much success, man. I hope that it sells as well as the diet book, so they can do a sequel to this.
Well, I tell you, if people pick up the book and read it, so I have this contest online.
Okay. Tell the people
that we have a group on Facebook called The Ancient Nine. So go to that page, and if you can solve, there are 3 questions on the page related to the mystery. If you can solve it, you win $5,000 cash.
Okay.
No one has solved it yet, but
no one has solved it yet.
No one has solved it. They've come close.
Because you talked about that on your interview with
Sway.
With Sway.
Yeah.
And at that time it was 2,500. So you've upped the ante a little bit.
We upped it a little bit. We upped it.
A little bit.
Sometimes money can be incentive. I like to have fun, first of all.
Exactly.
And I mean, I get no benefit from it, but you know, I think it's a fun little mystery thing for people to do, to try to solve these 3 questions as they relate to the book and the history of the Ancient Nine.
All right, awesome. So I have a wide range of listeners, and a good percentage of them are artists.
Okay.
That listen to my show, and you're a prolific writer. Talk about,
when you say artists, what do you mean by artists?
Artists meaning writers, creators, musicians, filmmakers, those type of folk.
Okay.
So you're a prolific writer. Talk a little bit about your process. You know, your writing process. How you get the concept. You know, from the concept to your outline to actually getting it published.
First of all, everyone tends to do it differently. So there's no one right or wrong way. It's whatever works for you. I am constantly writing, nonstop. And I write a lot in my head, literally. So what I'll do before I sit down to, whether it's a piece of fiction or nonfiction, is I will map out the book in my head. And I will hammer away at it. And I'll do it all the time. I'll do it in an Uber heading between meetings. I'll do it on an airplane before I fall asleep. You know, I'm always constantly thinking about an angle or a story or something like that, or something will spark. I'll see something like last night. I got in town late, and so I went to this diner and saw this old dude with a hunched back reading a New York Times in quarters, eating this huge piece of chicken. And I just felt like, wow, what a great character. Like, what a great character that guy could be. And I could see the scene. And so I'm constantly writing and thinking, observing. I love to observe. And so for me, I first start with a concept, with an idea. I have this new series that I'm working on, which is a private investigator named Ash Kane, who used to be on Chicago Police Department, used to be CPD. He left under kind of certain circumstances, and now he's a PI.
Okay.
And he takes on very few cases in Chicago. And so I'm creating this series, this Ash Kane series, where this PI is a little bit of a throwback, but he's this kind of wise Alec, but very smart, irreverent.
Okay.
Who can't help himself but want to make things right. When he sees wrong, he can't stop himself. Even if it's none of his business, you know, he's got to do right. Yeah. He's got to make sure that wrongs are righted. Okay. So anyway, so I'm working on that. Now, what I'll do is I'll think about it, I'll map it out in my head, so that when I get to my computer to write, I already have, it's just about flow at that point. You know what I mean? And this goes for my nonfiction also. It's about flow. So, and then I'm a zone writer. So I hit zones. So, you know, something will spark in me, and I can sit down in one session and write 12 pages. You know, I can write 25 pages in a day. I've done that because I'm in a zone. And it's just, and my body, it's hard to describe, but my body feels like it's just a vessel.
Everything's coming
for
through
the word.
You.
It just comes through me.
Yeah.
You know, there's not much work for me. And I'm a great typist. I'm a very fast typist.
Yeah.
So I sit down and I can beat the keys and I'll have 20 pages. I also tend to be a very organized writer. So I'll put myself, now when I'm zoning, I'll put myself on a schedule of how many pages I want to write a day, at least. Minimum. And then I try to exceed it. And then I'll print out a blank calendar and every day I'll mark
Okay.
10,
Yes.
11, 12.
Yeah.
That's how many pages per day I did. And that just kind of inspires me and keeps
Yeah.
me going. I also make sure that whenever I'm done writing, I never stop writing when I run out of ideas. I always stop writing when there's more to tell, where the idea is still fresh. So I know that the next day I have a place to start.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't go to empty.
Got
I get
it.
down to about a quarter of a tank.
So when you feel yourself getting there, you stop.
I stop. I know I got
tip.
something to pick
It's
up
a
on.
great tip.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I've never had writer's block ever.
Right.
It's a weird concept to me, and I know people have it, and it's a real thing, and I feel bad if people have that. But
I feel bad for you, but
no, it's tough. No, I can't imagine sitting down to a blank page and being paralyzed. That would be a bad feeling as an artist and creator.
Yeah.
But for me, my writing is zone-like, and I am constantly doing it. And I just was thinking, we went to this year we did the French Open in Wimbledon, and we were in Wimbledon in London. We were on the train waiting for the train to Wimbledon, which is, by the way, an awesome experience for those who like tennis or just like a sporting event, big sporting events. But you take the train into Wimbledon, and I got so much done on that platform.
Wow.
Because the ideas of a book I was writing back home, and I just took out a piece of paper, folded it into eighths, and just started writing bullet points. And then I can take that. I don't write the whole story. I write bullet points.
Like an outline.
Yeah, I take that. I take it back home, and then I can take those bullet points and embellish them, and then I have paragraphs, and then it just flows.
Okay. And then after you finish with your manuscript, then you take it to your editor.
Well, yeah.
And then the editor does what
I think one of the
editor
mistakes that young writers do is they try to edit themselves too much. So spend all day writing, and sometimes before I go to sleep, I'll read some of it, but I won't heavily edit it because you can't go forward. The editing process is a whole different ballgame, right? And so get it out first. Get it on the paper, get it in the desk, on your desktop. And then when you go back to edit, then you can start, as my son says, start doing surgery on it. You know what I mean? Then
the Ginsu.
Yeah, then you start doing surgery. But people try to do surgery while they're trying to also create.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. And so I will every day or every couple of days reread what I've written.
Sure.
Do very light editing, mostly grammatical, stuff like that, spelling. And then when it's done, then I'll sit back and I'll print chapter at a time.
Okay.
And then I'll heavily edit the chapter.
Got it.
And then when I feel like the manuscript is in shape, then I forward it to my editor and say, Here you go. Here you go.
Speaking of your son, this process requires a lot of alone time, right? The writing process. How do you carve that out, with your family responsibilities? Do you do, like I've heard some writers, they get up and write from like 4 to 6, 4 to 7, take the kids to school, then write, some during the day, that kind of thing. Obviously this is what you do, so they know this is important. How do you sort of manage that, being able to get that focused time in?
It's easy for me, actually.
It's easy, okay.
I write when I start writing, there is no clock. So I literally will be writing from 2 to 5, 2 to 6.
Yeah.
I write all kinds
PM.
of hours. No, AM.
Oh, you saying AM?
Yes, I'll write.
Wow. Okay.
I'll write over the graveyard shift. Okay.
Huh.
And then I'll take a nap, wake up, help to get the kids ready for breakfast with my wife, take them to school, then come home, maybe take a nap. I like to nap.
Yeah.
I'll take a nap,
Nap's
then get
important.
up. Yeah, very important. And people don't do enough of it, by the way.
Yeah.
But the Europeans do it right. A lot of European countries believe in naps and give people time to nap. But anyway.
That's the next book.
How to sleep right.
Right, exactly.
But anyway, and then I come home and then I can work while they're at school. Or when I'm on a trip like this, I write a lot on the plane. I write waiting for planes. I write in my hotel room because I'm by myself.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky that I'm able to write in very different environments, and it has not required time away, from the family.
That's
the
great.
only time
That's fantastic.
the only time my writing will impinge on family time is if I'm under deadline, and I got to get, the copy editor has sent me, so I hand the manuscript in. The copy editor will look at it and then make suggested changes, typically punctuation, continuity issues, and send it back to me. And I have a deadline when I have to get that back to them so that the book can keep going in its production process. But that's really it if I'm up against a deadline like that.
Okay. All right, cool. Um, so you took a little bit of a risk releasing Ancient Nine. What do you say? Risk meaning you're exposing all of these things that are supposed to be, secretive or hidden. What do you say to first-time authors who are concerned about releasing their books for fear of hurting or exposing someone they're close to? And just as a side note, have you heard from any of your, Harvard brothers who were in the club with you that had some feedback for some we'll say focused feedback for you on the book?
If you have a great story to tell, whether it's a non-fictional story, a true story, or whether it's a fictional story, and you think that you are compelled to tell it, and you think that there's an audience that would like to hear it, I think that you have to very cautiously weigh the importance of getting that story to people versus whose feelings you might hurt. Now, if you are purposely being malevolent about something or trying to malign somebody, that's different. Or if you're putting people's names in there and you know that it only is going to bring, that's a different kind of calculus you got to do. But I think my story, let's talk about my story. So my story is based, on a secret society at Harvard where people are sworn to an oath. And I struggled because I did not want to write a book that was a hit piece on my club, because my club was fine. I had a great time. I still have friends from there. It was a great experience. Even though there's some things about the club I don't think are right. The exclusionary nature of the club based on race and gender I don't think is correct. But I also didn't want to write a nonfiction expose hit piece to say, this is what these guys are doing. And, that wasn't what kind of book. Some people may want to write that book. That wasn't my book. I decided to make it a fictionalized account. So I used as the premise my true experiences, and then I added some fictional elements in there. Okay. But it's based on my true experience. And I think that as a writer and an artist, you have to decide how you want to package the information and how you want to distribute the information. For me, telling this story could have been done as a nonfiction book, behind the scenes of a Harvard Final Club, right? Would be very gripping, by the way. But how I wanted to tell the story and the way I wanted to tell the story, putting it in a novel form was better for me. And so I think that, to answer your question, more succinctly, I think that every artist has to decide whether or not the value of telling the story is greater than the potential, there's no guarantee it's going to harm someone, than the potential harm it may do or what it may jeopardize on a personal level.
In other interviews, I've heard you say that you're an artist, and that struck me because in the last couple of years, I've had to accept that about myself as well. When did you know you were an artist, particularly, coming through this very left brain, medicine? When did you accept that about yourself? Was it a moment? Was it like
way before? I knew as a kid.
You knew as a kid. Okay.
I knew at 9 that I wanted to be a doctor. And I also knew at 9 that I was a very creative person. And that in some way my life was going to be involved in story in some way. Okay. Now, my real influence as far as storytelling really comes from being in college. So about my first year in college, I was home, and my aunt, who did not go to college, didn't even finish high school, is a voracious reader. And she would read and read and read. And I just found it a very interesting paradox that someone who didn't finish school was also such a bibliophile as she was, right? And so she told me one time, she said, and she knew I like books too. I've always loved books. She said, you got to go pick up this book. It's called The Firm by John Grisham. Okay, this is before The Firm became The Firm. Yeah. Okay, it was a little paperback book. And in my hometown, there was a little discount store that you could buy books for like 30% off, 40% off. And so we used to go, and she would recommend a book. We had like our own little book club. Yeah. And so she went, and I bought The Firm per her recommendation. And I got to tell you, even now, I still have that feeling. You talk about, as far as page turners are concerned, like, I don't care what literary critics say, that is a masterpiece in the sense of the technique. I found myself trying to read at stoplights. I didn't want to leave the house without it in the car. I'm telling you, I wanted it in case I had a few minutes. because the story was so gripping with Mitch McDear. And I knew then, after I finished that book, even while I was reading that book, I said, geez, one day I would love to be able to create story, to engender and to prompt the kind of emotionality that I felt reading that. It was so cathartic. You know, you were scared one minute, you were excited, you were laughing, you were angry. There was so much that was going on that I felt personally as a reader. And I knew then, reading that book, that one day I hope to be able to publish story in some form that I can hopefully get people to feel the same way. And so when people read The Ancient Nine, and I've gotten several emails, people saying that they couldn't put it down, that they were up late at night, that is the greatest compliment you can pay to me, is to say that I couldn't stop reading this book. I love that.
Wow. Okay. All right. My last question is about, I actually thought of this question on the way here. You have a lot of great relationships. I'm not just talking about your family, but personally. I mean, you and I know people that you're great friends with. You have this relationship with the Rachel Ray Show, this relationship with Strahan and Good Morning America. I mean, not Good Morning America. What's the name of the damn show?
Yeah.
Good Morning America.
Yeah.
And these are relationships that have been going on for a long time. Even my wife mentioned to me this morning. She's like, "Yeah, I used to see Strahan and Dr. Ian in the meatpacking district back in the day." You know, when I first moved to New York, and when I was 20, in my 20s. So, you know, these are long-term relationships. Just talk a little bit about, you know, maintaining relationships, whether they be business or personal, and, you know, maybe some tips for folks. 'Cause I think sometimes that's difficult for people. They meet people, especially when you get older. They meet people and they're not really sure how to maintain a relationship.
Let me start answering this question this way.
Okay.
The other day I was in my writing cave, and for some reason I was searching something on YouTube. I was looking at something. And on the side, you know how sometimes it populates suggested videos on the side?
Sure.
There was a Robin Williams on Johnny Carson.
Okay.
Now, I know this is really different for African-American guy my age, but I loved Johnny Carson. Okay, Johnny Carson I was not his demographic, but but I watched Johnny Carson religiously. I thought he was the funniest guy next to Richard Pryor and Red Fox. I thought they were three of the funniest human beings I've ever heard. And Johnny Carson was a tremendous showman. I mean, if you look back at his stuff, you can tell why he was the greatest. I mean, at that genre. And so I'm sitting there watching Robin Williams, who was a comic genius too, by the way.
Sure.
And Robin Williams, the minute he got on stage, he just went berserk. And Johnny Carson is letting him do his thing. And then Jonathan Winters comes on, an old school comic. So the three of them are on this thing, and I'm sitting there, and literally for an hour and a half, I'm supposed to be writing for an hour and a half. I'm sitting here searching now for more appearances of these guys on the Johnny Carson show, seeing these guys. And Johnny Carson made an unbelievable statement. Jonathan Winters and Johnny Carson were friends. And during the interview, what really attracted me was he kept saying things like, when we were at dinner the other night, or at the party last year. And so you very rarely, by the way, and people would always say how Johnny Carson didn't speak much about relationships and didn't have a lot of personal relationships. But what touched me tremendously was that these two guys, who were very professional and very much like, I'm a guest on this famous person's show, this famous talk show, but you could tell that there was something there, that they had this long-term friendship. And Johnny Carson was very gracious in giving his friend his stage. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He gave Jonathan Winter the stage. And at the end of the show, Johnny Carson said, the best thing I did today was get out of the way.
Wow.
Right? That's great, isn't it? He said, the best thing I do was I got out of the way and let them do their thing. So when I think of my friendships, with Michael Strahan in particular, we met in the most random, unplanned way. I mean, you know, a mutual friend of ours, Bobby Brown, the makeup artist, the makeup magnet, Bobby Brown, she and I were on Today's Show together. And she lived in she still does, she lives in Montclair. Stray was living in Montclair at the time. And she invited me to the Fresh Air Fund, at Central Park at the old Tavern on the Green.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself. And so she said, hey, Ian, come to this charity event. Sure. I'm come to this table. And I sat next to this big black dude who obviously played sports. And I didn't know his name. I didn't recognize him. And I know this is weird I'm an avid sportsman. I just didn't know him.
Yeah.
And we had this great conversation, and we enjoyed talking about golf.
Interesting.
Okay, because we both love golf, and he's a big golfer. And so we spent our dinner talking about that. And we exchanged numbers, and we said, let's get together and play. Once again, I didn't know who he was. So that night, my brother said, hey, you know, what's going on? We talked every day. You know, what'd you do today? I said, well, I was at this dinner with Bobby, and I met this guy named Mike Strand, I think. Strand. He's like, wait. He's like, wait. Mike, what? Does he play football? I said, yeah, he's a football player for the Giants. That's it, the Giants.
Right.
I wasn't sure if the Jets or the Giants. And he said, are you talking about Michael Strahan? I said, oh, that's it. Strahan. And so he's like, Ian, you know who that is? I said, I have no idea who that is. He was like, Ian, that's Michael Strahan.
Yeah.
The man. So funny story. So my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, we were, season started, and he and I had started playing golf and hanging out with each other, okay? Because we liked each other. I still didn't understand who he was. And then my wife and I were watching the game. The season started. So we're watching the game, and he sacks the quarterback, and he does his stomp out dance where, you know, he flexes his muscles and, you know, he's, you know.
Right.
And he was ferocious. And my wife looked at me and was like, you're hanging out with this guy? And I'm like, babe, this is not the guy I know.
Right, this is the guy I talk to, right?
No, wait, this is, I've never seen him like this.
Right.
He is nice. He's very soft-spoken, blah, blah, blah. And so that was my introduction to the other life that he led. And we've been friends ever since. We've helped each other through tough times and through good times. And we are as close as ever. And he's like a brother to me. And relationships are important to me. And the sad thing about life is that, unfortunately, things are so fast-paced that you don't get a chance to not only form relationships, but truly develop them and to truly appreciate them. And I was watching James Baker speak at 41's funeral about their friendships.
Yeah.
And about
so heartfelt. Yeah.
Right? And I just love how he was talking about his friend. He wasn't talking about the president. He was talking about his friend and how he broke down, because at the end of the day, strip away all of our accolades and titles and money and stuff like that. At the end of the day, we're human beings. And when you can form a bond with another human being that has nothing to do with all this outside white noise, that's a very special thing. And people don't establish those kind of friendships anymore.
No.
And I make a point now, by the way, of calling up my friends who, by the way, we're still close. We just don't speak as much as you used to. I'll call them up and just say, dude, I'm just checking in. What's going on? There's no agenda. Don't need anything. I know you don't, but I just want to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And so friendships are very important to me and meaningful. And I'm a very loyal friend. And I'm with you. If we're in it,
we're in it.
We're in it. That's just the kind of guy I am. And I've always been that way. And so I appreciate these kinds of things.
Yeah. That's very Cancerian of you. Cancers are usually very, very, very committed and dedicated. Yeah. All right. Let's jump into how we doing on time? Maybe another 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah. I should say, by the way, my social media, if you want to follow me, since you mentioned my Instagram, is at Dr. Ian Smith. Spell the doctor out, IAN Smith. And if you want to join one of our free workout plans, go to Facebook, the Clean 20. Use the numbers 20 and join the group.
Yes, and we'll repeat that. I always do it at the end, but we'll repeat it again. All right, so we're going to jump into yes or BS.
Okay, I just answer yes or BS.
You answer yes or BS. Okay. If you want to expound, you can. If you don't, we move on.
Okay.
Number 1, Dr. Ian Smith prefers wearing the goatee.
Yes. I don't do it as often as I want, but yes, I prefer it.
Okay. Number 2, weight loss is primarily psychological.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Weight loss is 80% mental and 20% physical. There are tons of great weight loss plans out there. There are thousands of good plans.
Yeah.
It's not the plan. it's where your mind is. And that's why my book in 2020.
Oh,
my book in 2020
coming. Okay.
will be Mind Over Weight. And it's all mental.
You already 2 years ahead. You got a book coming out in 19. You got one coming out in 20.
That's what I do. Writers write. That's what Stephen King said.
Writers write. Number 3. In life, shooting your shot is always the right choice.
Oh my goodness. What can I say above yes?
Hell yes.
You better believe it. I told my kids who play
my wife
tennis.
says I shoot my shot too much.
No. I told my kids when they play tennis. Yeah. I said, listen, as long as you hit the right shot, you're going for the baseline, you're going for the corners. As long as you hit going for the lines and you miss it, that's okay. Yeah. But you hit the cross-court shot. That was the right shot. Yeah. Always take the right shot. Yeah. You may not make it, but you took the right shot. Yeah. So 100% always take your shot.
Excellent. All right. Number 4. I know you answered this, but it's a shocking thing, so I want to bring it out here. The number 1 status symbol for men is settling down and starting a family.
BS.
BS?
BS to that.
There was, what book was it? It was one of your books where you were saying that, I think it was...
The Truth About Men?
The Truth About Men. You were saying that was actually higher on the totem pole for things that men want than you would expect.
That wasn't my study. That I was reporting on a study.
Okay.
I was reporting on a study that's what it said.
Okay.
But I don't think so.
Okay.
No, that's not my opinion.
Okay.
By the way, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be in that place in my life. Yeah. But I'm equally happy of where I was before. I don't think, life is about seasons.
Preach.
Life is about seasons.
Preach.
And so, the biggest problem is that some people don't accept and appreciate all of their seasons. And they want to get stuck in the season. I don't want to be out in clubs, running around in clubs at this age. Right. I'm happy to go home, to see my kids, to cook dinner with them, and then to put them to bed. And my wife and I sit there and watch HGTV, right. Island Bargain Hunters. Right. Or Downton Abbey. I mean, that's what I love to do. Yeah. If I'm not binging on Netflix.
Right. All right. Number 5. Well, we actually already touched this before I asked you, but Dr. Ian K. Smith will produce his own program for television in 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we just spoke on it. The detective. Yeah. The private investigator.
Yes, I want to do that as a Netflix series. Excellent.
Number 6. The Ancient Nine will be turned into a screenplay written by Dr. Seku Gathers. You don't have to answer that. That's called shooting a shot.
Well, I'm not in charge of that. Well, let me answer that. So the way it works is a producer
yes.
Has bought the option.
Producers bought the option.
They bought the option.
They decide.
And then they decide kind of who the team is. So you have a chance. You have a chance. I have a chance. So who knows? But yes, you have it's possible. Hey, listen, if you can write it and put it down, you got
a shot just like anybody else.
Better believe it.
All right. Number 7. That was funny. Number 7. Nonfiction is much easier to write than fiction.
True. Yes.
Okay.
Because nonfiction is typically linear, and you follow research, and it's the thought processes are logical, and when you're writing fiction, it's completely creative. Particularly my genre, which is thriller / mystery. It's you got to make sure that the continuity is right. You got to make sure that you're leaving enough that from chapter 2 that comes back up in chapter 46 that keep track of everything. Yes, writing nonfiction is easier.
Cool. Number 8. A critical key to happiness involves the act of giving.
100%. The feeling you get, and I know it's hard for people who think that they don't have a lot to give, to conceptualize giving. Right. But giving does not always mean a monetary give.
Correct.
Giving is spending time with people, listening to people, being a sounding board for people, small gestures, even speaking to people. Getting off of an airplane and saying hi to the cleaners or the transport people that are sitting there waiting, just saying hi to them. Yeah. Think about how many people just walk by them like they're part of the furniture, right? Yeah. That, and I do that, and you know what? They are shocked when I do that. It's almost like a custom,
right?
Because they're like, "What is he saying to me?" Like he's talking. Yeah, I just say, hey, how you doing?
Right.
And not just like, hey, how you doing?
Right.
Like
mean it.
I mean it. How's everything? Like, we can't have a 10-minute conversation, but I'm willing to sit there and listen to your answer. Hey, how's everything going?
Yeah.
And to see the way people react to that is spectacular. Or even like if you go to like a restaurant, or to one of these, like a pret a manger or something like that, and you say to the person, hey, how's it going today?
Yeah. They're completely taken
flustered.
off guard. Yeah.
Flustered.
All right. Number 9, last one. You don't have to answer this if you don't want. Dating for 14 years is a recipe for a successful marriage.
Well, I only have the option of yes or BS.
No, you can, there are people that have said yeses, BS's.
Yeah.
Combinations.
I think it's situational.
Okay.
I really do. I think that, one thing about dating for 14 years is you develop friendship.
Oh, yeah.
And friendship, I think, is the foundation for a good marriage.
Yeah.
And I think that all marriages have their challenges. And I think that the reason why marriages, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why some marriages fail and some succeed is because the foundation isn't good, right?
Yeah.
If you have a cracked foundation, then when the building falls, there's nothing to, but when you have a solid foundation, you can rebuild.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that if you date that long and you develop a real friendship, I think it is a good indicator of your ability to weather the storms that all marriages, I don't care who you are, all marriages have storms. I think you can weather them better.
Okay. I have a good friend of mine, not like you, 14, but he dated for 8 years. And part of it was he was going through residency and the whole thing, and he didn't want to get married. But, they have a super strong relationship. And I always joke with his wife and say, you're the most patient woman I've ever met. Because this brother made you wait 8 years. Because she was ready from like year 2, But he was very focused on, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it.
Guess what?
And if you're with me, you with me.
Some people enter the institution of marriage prematurely.
I believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't believe, and I
believe that.
To my grave, I will say this.
Yeah.
That there is no stop clock on when you have to decide that it's right for you. You have to organically decide that this is the time for you to do it.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Now, people didn't believe me, by the way. They didn't believe me. No, my best friend, straight in, my brother, they didn't believe me, but I said, okay, I'm ready. Because it just happened to me. I just felt it. There was nothing, I can't pinpoint and say that I saw something, someone said something to me. There was no pressure. I just felt like this was the time, and I went and did it. No fanfare. No, I just went and did it because it was the right time for me.
Yeah.
Had I done it when it was not the right time for me, I don't think it would have worked. I think that a lot of people do that. And they do it because someone says, there's an expiration date on this relationship unless you put a ring on it. And you know what? If I'm a woman, you don't want a ring from someone who is not ready.
A pressure ring.
No, it's pressure ring. It's not good, man. I'm telling you. Now, if you need to go on another relationship, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I respect what you need, and I'm not feeling that need. But what you don't want is that person who you drag into a situation and that person is not ready. And this is just about marriage, by the way. This is about life in general.
Yeah.
Is that if you're going to do something with someone, you're going to partner in some way.
Yeah.
The person's got to be all in with you.
Yeah.
That's just how it works.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a good place to end. And I'll say that, similarly, I'm very appreciative that when I reached out, you were willing to partner in this process and you were 100% committed. You were on time. And I thank you for agreeing to sit down and talk to the people and give them some of that truth prescription. It's very important.
I didn't know you before this, but I appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that, I've been reasonably successful in my life. And I think that part of being successful, part of the obligation of being successful is also to be a catalyst for other people's success.
Yeah.
And it may be inconvenient. It may not make sense to you necessarily, but, giving someone time and energy, I think, is the least that we can do. And once again, that gets back to the whole human factor.
Sure.
That people kind of get caught up in their titles and their material success, and they just don't behave like just good human beings. Seriously.
Yeah.
I do that.
Yeah.
I try to do as much as I can. I mean, I have limited time, but People ask me questions on Instagram. I try to, a guy hit me the other day about his mother's 400 pounds in Cleveland and he's at wit's end. And I respond to these people.
Yeah.
Because.
And it's you. It's not a marketing company.
No.
People should know it's him.
It's
responding.
always me. Yeah. Always me. But I just think that's part of your obligation. Life is short. Life is finite for all of us. And I think that you have to appreciate as much as, one of my things you see on my Instagram, I always talk about living life on full blast. And I mean that. And back to 41, the stories I love of is how voracious and vigorous he was. And, jumping out of planes when he got old, seriously.
At 90 or whatever.
At 90, yeah. I mean, he really, they said, great sportsman, played tennis. He really liked to have fun, driving his boat too fast, right? I mean, I just think that you got to give it your all so that when you reach the end, and we all will reach the end, if you know that you're reaching the end, you can look back and say, man, this was a great ride.
No regrets.
Right? No regrets. I had a great ride doing this thing. And I think that happens to all of us. And I don't care how many millions or billions you have, you cannot take it with you. It can't go into the ground with you. And but what can happen is you can leave a legacy of greatness and what you've done for other people. And that's what I try to do with my life every day. I don't always succeed, but I try.
All right. Dr. Ian, let the people know how they can connect with you. Just give us that Instagram again and Facebook, any other ways they can reach out to you and become part of the cipher of wellness that is Dr. Ian.
Nice word.
Dr. Ian K. Smith.
Yeah, so my Instagram is at Dr. Ian Smith, spell the doctor out, I-A-N Smith. On Twitter, it's Dr. Ian Smith, Dr. Ian Smith. And on Facebook, you can join our group. It's called The Clean 20, the numerals 20, and The Ancient 9, the novel. If you want to try to win that $5,000 cash, go to our page, The Ancient 9, spell 9 out.
I'll just say something quick about the Clean 20. The reason I really like this book is because, you have all of these, health people out there talking about how to eat clean. And usually it's eating clean and spending $1,000 a week. This book is for anybody. Anybody can pick this book up, read it. It has recipes in there that are affordable. You can eat cheese, you can eat pasta. If you follow the program and lose this 20 pounds in I think 20 days. Is that right?
10 pounds in 20 days.
10 pounds in 20 days.
There you go.
So that's it. All right, Dr. Ian, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off as I always say, the truth will set you free if you let it.